What's up guys, Perry from Rockville here, and today I'm going to show you how to set up your Rockpar TRI compact LED par cam light. The light comes in two colors of black and white, but the setup for each is the exact same. As you can see, it comes with the light itself with a power cable attached to the light, an attachable mounting bracket with two washers and two screw knobs, and a wireless remote. Now there are a few different ways we can use the Rockpar TRI, with one of the ways being wall washing. So you can use the back of the light to have the light shining completely upwards, or you can attach the mounting bracket so you can angle the light in different positions so the light hits the wall the way you want it. To attach the bracket, you're going to line up the washers to the holes on the side of the light, then you'll line up the holes of the bracket to the holes on the side, and use the screw knobs to secure the bracket onto the light. So again, when wall washing, we can place the light directly up against the wall and have the light shining upwards, or we can place the light a few inches away from the wall while using the bracket to angle the light so it's hitting the wall the way you want it. And once you have the light positioned the way you want it, you can plug it in with the power cable, and from there you can use any of the colors or modes available on the light, which we'll get to in a bit. We can also use this hole here on top of the mounting bracket to attach a lighting clamp like our very own LC70, so we can mount the light onto our truss like you see right here. To do that, you're going to take your lighting clamp, take off the bolt here on the clamp, then you're going to take your bolt and run it through the bottom of the bracket. Then we'll line up the lighting clamp to the bolt here and screw it on to secure it to the bracket. After that, we can line up the clamp to a spot on our truss and secure the light to the truss by screwing in the butterfly screw of your clamp. Another way we can use the Rockpar TRI is to light up a totem stand like our very own RTP32W. To do that, you're just going to lift up the scrim of your totem stand and place your light in the center so it will give your totem stand a illuminated effect. We can also use the light to light up a DJ facade, which is a very similar approach to wall washing. So you can either place your light against the DJ facade or place it a few inches away and angle it towards the DJ facade for an illuminated effect. And depending on how big your facade is, you can use multiple of these lights to light up the DJ facade so it's even more lit up. Now there are several mode options that we can use with the Rockpar TRI that we can go through with the buttons on the back of the light underneath the LED display. To change the mode the light is set to, you can use the menu button. Then once you're in one of the modes, you can use the up and down buttons to go through the values of the mode, and then we can use the enter button to access a sub menu on some of these modes. You can also use the wireless remote to go through all these different modes, change the overall color of the lights, and much more. So let's go through all the different modes right now. Starting with the A1 menu, this allows us to set the light into a static color. So we can use the up and down buttons to go through all of the different colors, and then we can press the enter button to activate the sub menu that allows us to change the overall brightness, with value 1 being the most dim and value 4 being the brightest. A2 sets the light into a automatic color cycle mode, where we can use the up and down buttons to adjust the speed of the color cycle. A3 sets the light into a color pulse mode, where we can use the up and down buttons to change what colors the light pulses between, and when we press enter, we activate the sub menu, which allows us to change the speed of the pulse. A4 sets the light into a sound mode, so when it picks up sound, the color of the light will change automatically. Then you can use the up and down buttons to adjust the sensitivity of the built-in mic that will pick up the sound. A5 sets light into a strobe mode, where we can use the up and down buttons to change the color of the strobe, and we can press enter to activate the sub menu that allows us to change the speed of the strobe. Now since this is an RGB light, we have 3 different menus where we can adjust the intensity of either the red, green, and blue LEDs. Playing with the intensity of all 3 of these modes allow us to color mix and get a variation of different colors. So for example, I can go into the R setting, use the up and down buttons to set the red LEDs into a certain intensity, and do the same exact thing with the green and blue mode to set the light into a customized color. After that, we have the D menu, which allows us to set the light into a DMX address that corresponds with our DMX controller, which we'll get to in a bit. And we also have the IP menu, which allows us to set the light into a DMX group. Now in case you didn't want to use the controls on the back of your light, you can always use the wireless remote. With it, I can turn my light on and set the light to different modes or colors. So for example, we're on the static color mode right now, and I can use the color buttons here to set which color we want the light set to. We can also set the light to the color change mode and use the speed buttons to control the speed of the color change. We can also set it to the color pulse mode, use the color buttons to set which lights it pulses between, and the speed buttons to control the speed of the pulse. We can also set our light to the sound mode, And we can also set the light to the strobe mode while using the color button to set the color of the strobe and use the speed buttons to control the speed of the strobe. The remote also allows us to set the DMX address or the IP group for the light, and we can also use the remote to turn the light off. Now, as I mentioned before, we can use a DMX controller to control our lights. To do that, I'm going to need some DMX cables. I'm going to take the male end and plug it into the DMX out on my controller. Then I'm going to take the female end and plug it into the DMX in on my first light. So now to connect my first light to the next light of my chain, I'm going to take another DMX cable. I'm going to take the male end and plug it into the DMX out of the first light. Then I'll take the other end and plug it into the DMX in on the second light. And we're going to repeat this process for however many lights we want set up in our chain. Next, we're going to go to our lights and go to the D mode to set our lights to the same DMX address. For today, we're going to be using D001. Another option we have is using the IP mode to set up different groups of lights. Doing this is basically a shortcut to group your lights together with a DMX controller instead of assigning each light to a DMX address. And each group will correspond to every 7 faders available on your controller. So for example, IP1 sets up one group of lights using faders 1 through 7. IP2 sets up a second group of lights using faders 8 through 14. So for example, let's say these two lights here are set to their own group. I'm going to set one of them to IP01 and I'm going to set the second one to IP02. I'm also going to want to activate scanner 1 here on the DMX controller. So now if I start to interact with faders 1 through 7, you'll see now that I have control over the first group of lights, and if I do the same thing for faders 8 through 14, I can then control the second group of lights. You can use the DMX guide to see which group of faders interacts with which IP group. So now I'm going to set the lights back to the same DMX address to show you all the different things we can do using a DMX controller. Again, we're going to want to activate scanner 1, and now we can go through all the different faders and what they do with our lights. Now we can use fader 1 to set the lights into different modes. And where we set fader 1 to determines the mode we set the lights in. So for example, values 10 through 50 set the lights to the color select mode. To know what value you're on, you can always use the LED screen on the controller. And we can use fader 2 to determine which color the light is set to. Values 51 to 100 activate the color change mode, where we can use fader 3 to control the speed of the color change. Values 101 to 150 activate the gradual change, where again we can use fader 3 to control the speed of the color change. Values 151 to 200 activate the sound mode. And values 201 to 255 activate the strobe mode, where we can use fader 2 to set which color the lights strobe to, and fader 3 to control the speed of the strobe. So to recap so far, fader 1 controls what mode we set the lights to, while fader 2 sets the color that the modes interact with, and fader 3 controls the speed. Then we have fader 4 that acts as a master dimmer for faders 5, 6, and 7. So I'm going to raise that all the way up for maximum brightness. So if I raise fader 5, that's going to bring out the red LEDs, fader 6 will bring out the green LEDs, and fader 7 will bring out the blue LEDs. And again, we can play with the intensities of these LEDs for a fully customized color. Now in case you didn't want to use a DMX controller with your lights, we can always use the master slave function. To do that, I'm going to use a DMX cable. I'm going to pick which light I'm going to use as my master light, so we'll go with this light right here. I'm going to take the male end and plug it into the DMX out of my master light. Then I'm going to take the other end and plug it into the DMX in on the next light. And we're going to want to repeat this process for however many lights we want to have set up. So next I'm going to go to my slave light and set it up to a DMX address with a D mode. For today we'll use 001. So now I can go to my master light and use the buttons on the back to set it to a mode. For example, I'll set it to a color change mode, and now you'll see that both lights start to change color together. We can also use the wireless remote to set our master light to a mode or color, and have our other lights follow. For example, I can set my lights to the color pulse, use the speed arrows to control the speed of the pulse, and I can even use the power button to turn my lights off or right back on. So hopefully this showed you guys how easy it is to set up your Rockpar TRI compact LED ParCam light. But of course, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to reach out to our customer support team through phone or email. As always, I'm Perry from Rockville, and we'll see you guys next time.